Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alan Hoare here from TU Dublin in the School of Surveying and Construction Management, and I'm also a founder of the Construction IT Alliance. Welcome to CitA Tech Live 2020 Virtual Summit, Day 1. This year our event is about changing the way we work. This week we will hear from 20 expert voices from across the globe who are already disrupting and introducing innovative approaches to how we'll work in construction in the future. The construction industry represents 13% of the world GDP. Even before the onset of this pandemic, COVID-19, the sector was experiencing an unprecedented rate of disruption. Some would call it a crisis, but this disruption has now accelerated. For example, we're seeing rapid adoption of digital for many companies who are compressing their digital transformation roadmaps from anything from 5 years down to 6 months. So the transformational forces you're going to hear this week will include digitization, industrialization, consolidation, decarbonization. But I suppose one of the recurring themes with all these transformational forces is the need for our industry to become more collaborative, i.e. collaboration. So Shannon, you might just share with us the program for this afternoon. So this afternoon we're going to be looking at how COVID-19 is accelerating transformation of the construction industry. Our speakers include Dr. Gkenakou, Sustainable Director of Multiplex, Niall Kane, Head of Smart Places, VINCI, Jennison, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager, Skanska UK, Vicki Reynolds, Head of Digital I3PT Certification, and Brandon Olivier O'Connor of Procore.
At this event, and to be the first one of a number of fantastic speakers. I'm going to be talking today about things that I've spotted during this period that have become really important, either because of COVID or because of the overall time frame that we are living in. And I would like to share those with you and the audience today. Thank you very much to everyone that has joined. And thank you to you, Alan, and to CitA for the invitation. So I'm Eva Gkenakou, Sustainability Director at Multiplex Europe. Multiplex, for those that don't know us, are a principal contractor in construction. We specialize in building tall buildings, especially residential offices, as well as complex developments like hospitals and education buildings. If we cast our minds back, first of all, in January earlier this year, the World Economic Forum then published a report on global risks for businesses. And what we saw then is that for the first time, climate tops the risk agenda for businesses. You will spot in the report that infectious diseases was also part of the key risks. And indeed, a few weeks later, the whole of the globe, one by one, the countries were hit by COVID. And that turned a lot of things upside down for a lot of people. Everyone's life has changed since. And we did see then some trends, or we start seeing some trends. People started realizing the fragility of life and thinking about what they can do about this long term and how everything is interconnected, started looking and favoring sustainable companies and companies where they have expressed their sustainability efforts quite strongly. So we have the latest figures from investment research company Morningstar to show that sustainable funds have raised just over 97 billion year to date against outflows of minus 27 billion for non-sustainable funds. So this is quite an important trend, significant, and it impacts all of us. But what are sustainable funds? Sustainable funds are those that look at improving biodiversity, reducing carbon emission, reducing toxic emissions, improving diversity, improving opportunities for everyone, improving health. So today I'm going to talk more a bit about the environmental aspects of sustainability. And as we all know, the theme that has become the most significant and time critical at the moment is climate change. And I would like to show this graph here that I think is quite important. So if we look at this graph, the built environment, construction and materials together account for 39% of the global carbon emissions. Whereas, for example, if we compare to aviation, that is 2%. So 39 for the built environment and 2% for aviation, that is much talked about, and rightly so. So together with that percent comes the responsibility for us all in the built environment of doing something about it, but also the opportunity for us to do something, because every business decision that we make, every decision that we make in our business life and outside of the business life has an impact on this, and we can bring about positive change. So I mentioned the 7 key business opportunities. What are those? Opportunity number one would be to mitigate the climate change risks to your operations and your assets. So climate change comes with risks for operations and for the buildings we design and build. And there is more legislation now coming from Europe, for example, the European Sustainable Finance Taxonomy legislation and the climate change disclosure guidelines known as TCFD. That means that businesses will need to disclose, publicly announce what percent of their portfolio is impacted by climate change, and also what percent of their portfolio is impacting climate change and what they are doing about that. Multiplex has been part of a series of webinars by the UK Green Building Council. So if you would like to know more, this is an area where you can find lots of good information, the TCFD webinars from the UK Green Building Council. Another area for more information is the British Council for Offices report, The Resilient Workplace, that was published earlier this year, and Multiplex were co-sponsors of that. I really like this report because it breaks everything down. The responsibilities of, say, the developer, the designer, the contractor, the occupier. So then we can see what we can do in our work or business life to make the right decisions to future-proof those buildings. Specific information you can find, I'll mention some example, is the fact that you can factor in the increasing frequency of extreme weather events. So you can do that, for example, through the CIPSI future weather files. Another example is to prepare and mitigate against overheating in buildings, against construction delays, flooding, and for that you can use the UK climate projections. And another example, a solution I really like is nature-based solutions, such as sustainable drainage, green roofs and walls for additional insulation, trees for shading. Those can have a cooling effect of 1 to 3 degrees. And after you install them, they act almost like free air conditioning. So I highly recommend those decisions. And those can help buildings meet new requirements coming in from brought in by the London plan, for example, here in London, that requires new developments to meet what is called an urban greening factor. Opportunity number 2 is to set clear net zero carbon goals for your operations and supply chains that add value to your brand, attract more investment and the best clients. You can do that by adopting internationally recognized initiatives, such as the science-based initiatives that has been created by the United Nations and WWF. And for example, Multiplex has done just that and has been the first contractor globally to align to the 1.5 degree scenario, meaning that Multiplex has set targets that contribute to limiting climate change to no more than 1.5 degrees. Specifically for buildings, there is a great initiative by the World Green Building Council called the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Commitment, that is for buildings, building owners, and building occupiers. And on their website, you can find more information on exactly how that is defined and what the methodology for achieving that is. And if you deal with commercial buildings, if you go to the Better Buildings Partnership website, you can see that organization has launched a climate change commitment pathway, and that's also brilliant. And you can see a number of key developers aligned behind that, bringing real change to the built environment. Opportunity number 3 is to design or retrofit your assets to be low energy and net zero carbon. This is to be aligned with the new carbon-free economy. And how can you do that? Helpfully, the RIBA and an organization called LETI have recently, well, earlier this year, published their recommended energy efficiency targets in their reports. That's the image I've got on the screen is from that report, and you can see that they have broken down buildings in different typologies. So for example, domestic or non-domestic, commercial, and so on. What good looks like. They have defined that in terms of energy efficiency. And how we can meet those targets in a low carbon way. This means designing in all electric heat pumps, hydrogen as a fuel, especially green hydrogen, meaning it's made through renewable power. Also using nature-based solutions, which is something I mentioned before. And if you'd like to see more, there is a fantastic report from some academic institutions and the UK Green Building Council called the Ignition Project report that just came out, that has a lot of information about key nature-based solutions, how much they cost, and the return on investment, as well as their effectiveness. Another way of cleverly designing buildings is to embed battery energy storage that helps optimize the energy efficiency. And of course, designing in renewables where that is possible. Since I mentioned renewables, opportunity number 4 is to ask your energy supplier for a green tariff to cut costs and your carbon emissions. So energy suppliers nowadays have what they call green tariffs, which means that they have a certificate to show that they've bought this amount of energy from a renewables supplier, and that is available for businesses or domestic. So for your flat, for your house, you can do the same. And by doing that, for example, Multiplex has done that and is currently committed by the end of this year to be on 100% renewables, and that has already drastically cut our carbon emissions. For a more long-term solution, you can speak directly to a renewables generator and sign an agreement called the Power Purchase Agreement, PPA, that guarantees your energy supply and your price for a more long-term period, let's say 10, 15 years. That gives great security for them to develop more renewables and provides a set price and security of supply to you. Also, a third solution to utilize green power can be biofuels from waste. That means that the fuels have in their whole life cycle almost zero carbon footprint. As carbon footprint, I don't particularly like this idea for a long-term solution, because biofuels still produce or contribute to bad air quality. But as a transitional step where you have things like generators that you cannot eliminate in any other way, that could be a clever solution for the next 1 or 2 years, if as a last resort, if nothing else is there. Opportunity number 4 is to design your assets to have low upfront embodied carbon. And what I mean by embodied carbon, I mean the carbon footprint of construction materials. So the organization, the LETI organization, has helpfully published a guide on what good looks like for embodied carbon of buildings in the report called the Embodied Carbon Primer. And that's an excellent guide. Also, we see now legislation coming in. For example, the Mayor of London has introduced in consultation the whole life cycle carbon assessment guidance, and there are benchmarks for buildings for now and in the future. And we also see the London plan requiring a circular economy statement for new developments. Just to mention some examples of what Multiplex has done for that. For example, Multiplex has diverted 99% of waste from landfill for the past few years. We are now aiming for 100% diversion rate. Diversion from landfill, I mean, into circular economy. So all the materials that are waste produced during construction, demolition, excavation is in one way or another reused or recycled. And also we promote materials from recycled sources, and 25% of the 5 key construction materials on our sites came from recycled sources the last couple of years. And we're also very proud to have worked with our supply chain to create an award-winning closed-loop system for finished works protection material. Opportunity number 6 is to invest in smart systems to lift your well-being and productivity, attract and retain talent, and reduce your carbon. Who would say no to that, right? So demand for smart systems in offices has skyrocketed since the beginning of the COVID crisis. And that's understandable. Everyone wants to know about the air quality. Everyone wants contactless services and information. And we are very proud at Multiplex to be delivering 22 Bishopsgate. That's in the picture here, which has been named the smartest skyscraper in Europe. And 22 Bishopsgate, we are also really proud of because of its well-building standard, which well-building, if you haven't heard of this term before, it's a well-being in buildings certification, and that has been shown to bring productivity lifts of at least 25%. So a brilliant way to really make more money as a business in a way and have people happier and healthier. 22 Bishopsgate is also WIRED Score certified. Such smart installations have been shown to improve energy efficiency by 35–40%. You can see specific examples of the best kind in the data center sector, for example, through DeepMind, artificial intelligence optimizations is a famous example of fantastic energy efficiency improvements there through smart systems. And I would also like to mention another aspect of smart systems where digital construction and BIM helps resource efficiency and future flexibility of space use with potential to reduce 75–90% of waste in real estate. And this is all about circular economy that can have benefits of 1.8 trillion euro annually in Europe alone. So brilliant savings there. And we come to the last business opportunity that I'm going to share with you today, which is collaboration and data sharing that allows businesses to tackle common challenges or global threats. And we have a number of great examples emerging the last few weeks and months. And I would like to mention here one that is very close to my heart because it's about contractors and the built environment. And it's also close to my heart as I helped launch it, and I'm really keen for more contractors to join. And you can do that at contractorsdeclare.co.uk. It's part of the umbrella of declarations and manifestos for climate change, and these are uniting the industry towards a green recovery and a fairer world. And that's very important to me. And as Martin Luther King said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects all indirectly affects us all directly. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be part of this event, and it's great to be following on from Eva. It's an excellent presentation. So what I'm going to be primarily focusing on today is looking at really the challenges, but also the opportunities in construction in the post-COVID world. So I'm kind of an optimist by nature, so I'm not going to try to dwell on the negativity, but there genuinely are some interesting opportunities for us ahead as an industry. So a bit about VINCI. It's a specialist civil engineering, construction and facilities management company. So effectively, we look after the life cycle of an asset. But I feel over the last number of months, it's been, I imagine, challenging for all of us on the call, but definitely for VINCI, where I think what I'd like to embrace is our values that you can see there on the right. They've really kind of helped us kind of weather this pandemic, but also open up new perspectives, which I'm going to share with you. So as you can see, we're involved in a lot of sectors, and one of the most common things that's across these sectors is how we manage the workplace or even provide a workplace for our own staff. So it's kind of something that I want to focus on today because it's really relatable to people, this idea about now in a new world working remotely, and how do we actually go back to this idea of working together in an asset or in a building. So what I'd like to share is this is an extract from our overall vision as a company, and I've highlighted a particular part of this vision, and it's about the adaptation. And it's a big theme for me today that I'm sharing, is that it's really the focus that we have over the coming months is understanding as a large organization, how can you take on board these challenges and start to navigate a route through those. And a big part of that is being agile, and that can be quite challenging when you're a large group, but we believe that there are new opportunities and ways to achieve that. And I think we're very, very fortunate to be living in a world, with such excellent technology that's really allowing us to collaborate, share ideas, and plan ahead. I think if this type of pandemic had happened, even a decade ago, without the technology we have now, we really, really would struggle. So it's kind of VINCI by name, VINCI by nature. We inherited our company name from Leonardo da Vinci. So innovation and this use of technology is kind of part of what makes us who we are. So I head up a specific function called Smart Places inside of VINCI. And really that's focusing on the sort of smart buildings and digital twin aspects of the asset lifecycle management. But it also has given us other opportunities to rethink about how we work. So really, I feel that we're kind of going through either the Kodak of construction moment or the blockbuster of facility management moment. And really what that means is that we're trying to work in a world where really the rules have changed. So when we think about what happened with Blockbuster or Kodak, effectively we saw a kind of a socio-economic shift or even a change in behavior. So then technology was able to provide new ways of either taking photos or being able to experience video online. So in a similar way, we're trying to understand how can we shift our thinking and look for new market making and opportunities, but also look after our existing clients and stakeholders and try to pass on where we can the best operational excellence and efficiencies. So one of my favorite quotes when I was undergrad at TU Dublin was this quote from T.S. Eliot. And if you take it literally, you can think about a mask, this idea of to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. And it's something that we're now dealing with on a daily basis. But I'm more thinking about how do we as a business face the market and what opportunities are staring back at us from that market. So we're trying to think about how do we reconfigure our processes to really adapt to the environment that we now operate in. So you can argue that places is experiencing a true identity crisis because really a place is defined by people and people give places purpose. And we've seen a lot of different built environment scenarios, whether it's the high street retail or even like the cinema multiplex. You're seeing this idea that people don't have a reason to go there anymore. So we're trying to understand how can we bring back that sense of identity and actually a reason to utilize the space. And for all of that existing building fabric that we're either constructing or maintaining, how do we continue to make it relevant and bring back the people so that they're able to have a good time and in a safe manner. So one of the areas I was going to focus on is just the evolution of the workplace. And my team and I spend a lot of time working with our clients to really optimize those environments, even before the pandemic, but more importantly now than ever to help them utilize their offices and other work sites as we move forward. So if we kind of look at the origin of some of the offices and how they're configured, we can go back to General Motors and you can kind of clearly see, not that they're socially distancing, but the idea that this office was configured around production. So the very tables themselves become the kind of unit of measure. So you're looking to produce automotive details and drawings using these large tables. So it's very clear to see that there's a purpose here. But then as we started to evolve over time and the digitization and computers came in, suddenly we changed the space to be more cubicle because it was around containing all the cables and the different pieces of infrastructure that were required to support a computer. But then we found that we were becoming, more collaborative as a workforce or as a culture. So then we went to the kind of open plan office, which is pretty much dominated the last decade. So most people are familiar in, working in an office like this. Then we started bringing in these concepts of hot desking or warm desking. But what we're starting to find now is that even these open plan offices can't accommodate people who want to join from an extended conversation. So if you have a group of people physically in the office and then your colleagues want to join via Zoom or Teams, it's very hard, even from a noise level, being able to facilitate that as much as having the screens. So we really see the kind of future of the offices here that we're kind of working on to kind of adapt and convert is really around this a hybrid model. It's a kind of open collaborative office where you have more environments which are around bringing people together to collaborate using technology, and then have your colleagues join still via digital platforms. But we don't really see the reason now to be sitting at your desk like it was a cubicle many years ago. So to achieve that, we really had to think of an entirely new strategy, and also how do you commercially deliver something like this? So something we are seeing is that a lot of the historical models that we've relied on are kind of thrown out the window, because really the world has changed. So we had to develop new ways of capturing information, so the built environment, whether it's drones or laser scanning, but to really quickly, accurately assess the geometry of the space and understand what could that space deliver, but also how do we interact with that space itself, whether you're wanting to interact with the facility remotely or you want to interact with it there. You don't really want to be touching things with your hands now. You want to be able to control the building yourself, whether it's by your smartphone or something similar. But really we're trying to look at the analysis. So what's the occupancy, what's the energy consumption? Because a lot of our models from a predictive maintenance or planned maintenance perspective were built up from algorithms of occupancy or understanding energy consumption, per quarter. But now we're having to kind of re-baseline those algorithms to understand how it is that we use buildings. And really the last two are around the Internet of Things and connectivity, and Eva touched on some of these points, but the idea that we really want to have more analytics and telemetry to understand the health of that building, but also the health of the occupant of the building. So some of the great technology that we're very fortunate to have access to now as an industry is the idea to be able to use portable laser scanners. So some of these now, like the one here provided by Leica Geosystems, you can walk around and capture the entire building in hours, when this used to be days or even weeks. And you're even starting to see these type of sensors being included onto a lot of the smart tablet devices like that Apple would produce. So it's really exciting that we're able to assess the risk, but also opportunity to convert a space and repurpose it and give it a new identity. So here you can see some of the outputs, and this deliverable, which is like, the entire building captured, it was done in one day. I mean, we never would have had that technology before, but it really helps our stakeholders to understand, what can they work with? So they have a new canvas to actually reshape this facility and think about how it could be repurposed and give it that sense of identity. We have now new technology to immersively plan the office. And as we know, VR is nothing new, but what we found, and something we didn't consider, is when people started coming back to the office from a lockdown, there's an element of anxiety or fear about what's it going to be like. So even being able to optimize the layout so you feel comfortable and you feel healthy, but also you're able to provide better design input, so we can get a better consensus from the occupant of how best we should use these spaces to make them more adaptable. And then really we're able to plan our sensor network and how we want to then embed and support that way of working. So you are able to provide, improved cleaning capability, or being able to book out rooms, or even wayfind if you're trying to navigate your way to the asset. So again, technology has started to create commercial opportunities, which all started from a pandemic challenge. But one thing that I feel that I'm very proud of that the company's doing, which is very different, is that going back to my earlier points about if you're a large organization and you have a very particular strategy, sometimes it's very hard to pivot away from that strategy. And one of the really interesting things that we're doing is we're using entrepreneurship. It's almost like our internal dragon's den, where we're able to take the great ideas from our colleagues and harness them and basically develop an actual plan and really challenge the status quo. So Leonard is a function as part of the VINCI group where a number of us, myself included, are actually kind of participants on that. So we run it in seasons, and really we're there as champions in a tiger team approach to challenge a certain way of doing and look for alternative business models and concepts to actually not only support market making, but actually even to refine an existing process. So this idea of adaptation, using your people to think differently rather than just the status quo, is very empowering, and it's starting to provide really interesting results. So here's just some of the savings you can see and the financial impact that some of these initiatives have had, but also they've led to the creation of new business units. So we're not always just managing or delivering the built environment. It's actually giving other digital services that have been created by working this very different way. So I think it's a very positive story that, this kind of the necessity is the mother of invention, this idea that, you know, we can look at the challenge but also come up with a brand new way of working. And really the kind of thing I'm going to end on is going back to that very famous quote from Darwin. So it's not about if you're the biggest company or the most intelligent company, it's more about that you're an adaptable, agile company, and that you can find new and interesting ways to respond to the current economic situation. But what we're starting to find is that the people that do think of this agile and positive way are going to reap the benefits. So that's everything from me, and I'll hand back to Alan should there be any questions.
Thanks, Niall. Very interesting. We actually say we've heard from Ava about planet. We've just heard from Niall about places, and we'll be talking about people in a minute. So all the P's this afternoon. So just on places, there's been much debate at the moment, Niall, about the future of offices, the future of the workplace. And what's your thoughts on what the future will look like? We all hope we'll have a vaccine in the future, but I suppose post-COVID, it's changing. You know, it's changing a lots of things. So what's your view on that? What's the future look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So what we do find is that the office as we know it has definitely gone away. But the idea that we won't have a physical space to collaborate, I don't think that's true. So what I was kind of touching on my presentation is that I think our actual production time, we will work from where we are. So we have now the technology to do so. And I imagine it's the same for your students, that they can pretty much experience a lot of their curriculum from, you know, where they are once they're connected. But when it comes to being able to provide flexible options for collaboration, people do generally tend to want to meet in a group. And we find even the energy ourselves involved when you meet someone physically versus digitally, you use a lot less effort because it's a lot easier to communicate when you're not in front of a webcam. So we still feel it's more of a hybrid model, that our offices, definitely from a VINCI perspective, are going to be used for really collaboration. So people would meet there to do workshopping or to explore ideas or to celebrate an event. But I don't see us going back to the cubicle mindset where we're just there doing our tasks sitting at a desk, because I think what was interesting is that, and this will be explored across the week of the presentations, is that if you looked at the climate goals that we have and the targets overall as an industry, we were going to have to stop needlessly driving places for no reason. Because really, if you're looking for productivity and sustainable achievement, I think the idea of what we're doing right now is actually going to be a real positive. It's really helped us culturally start that transition to being more lean and not traveling unnecessarily.
Thanks, Niall. So Niall, you're very good. You're also ahead of schedule, which also also helps. Maybe we can open it up a little bit to some of the delegates. We've got a few minutes. You can use the hand function, or just come in with any observations of what Niall or indeed Eva had said, or any questions you might have. Could we have one or two questions from the audience, maybe, before we move on to speaker 3? Would anyone like to ask a question? No questions? Yes? Who is this?
No, that's only Suzanne. I'm just saying they're very quiet.
They're a bit shy. Okay. Well, listen, Niall, thank you very much. Any questions?
I have one question.
Yes, Sean. Could you just introduce yourself, Sean?
Yeah, Sean Galvin here. I'm a project manager with the National Development Finance Agency. Just a quick question, Niall, for yourself. I know you spoke about, I suppose, surveying, I suppose, buildings and floors there for, I suppose, repurposing in terms of office spaces and the internal office environment. I'm just wondering, has VINCI been engaged by any prospective clients to look at repurposing, I suppose, residential or commercial to residential buildings?
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting question. So as part of our group, we don't usually focus on residential only. We will do kind of, kind of multi-residential units, so kind of high-rise or that type of thing. But what we do actually have inside of our group is a concessions company, and there have been a number of stakeholders that have approached us thinking about alternatives to how these spaces could be used. So we've been kind of providing the facility to do a number of workshops to help them explore these ideas. But I do know one of our business lines is actually exploring doing this as a kind of showcase. It's going to take an existing site and actually do this digitally to actually show what could be done. So this idea of creating a flexible environment. So they're looking to effectively use a digital platform to show, almost like you would have a product optimizer. You can pick what option you want that space to be, but equally they want to build it also to show that it can be done, and it can be done using, you know, the advantages of offsite manufacturing and using, you know, new productive methods.
Okay, thanks, Niall. No? Interesting.
problem. Thank you, Sean. Any other questions?
So, hi everyone. Thanks, Alan, for the introduction. I'm going to talk to you today about the impact that coronavirus has had on equality, diversity and inclusion in the construction industry, and what that means for us as an industry as a whole. I'm going to give you my thoughts and some examples from the project that I work on, and then also some suggestions of how I suggest we move forward and what we do going through this pandemic and also past it too. To get us started, I would really like to know who's in the audience. I do some speaking as part of my role, and I find it really odd not to be able to see faces, to see participants, and to know who I'm speaking to as well. So if you could, please grab your phone, which is hopefully located near where you're sitting, and I would like you to go to www.slido.com, that's SLIDO, and I want you to enter in the code CITA, CITA live, and there are 3 really quick questions on there. 2 are semi-serious, just to know who there is, and 1 is a little bit more fun. But it's just so I can see who's out there, and then I should be able to share the results with you live as well. So, just while you're doing,
okay,
when you're on there. Okay, let's share this screen with you now. Is it working, Alan?
Yeah, we can't see the slides yet, but just share them with us there if you can.
That's fine. Can you see the results now?
No, we can't. We just, yes. So
Yeah.
something's coming through now. Yeah, so we're seeing the results now.
Okay, so it looks like we've got 83% of people sitting at home, like myself here too. A couple of people in the office, nobody on site and nobody elsewhere. So if you're at home, this might be easier, but please stand up, stretch your legs. Here's your reminder to do so, because you've probably been sat here for nearly an hour now, and it's healthy to stretch those legs. Okay, what's your day job? Okay, we've got someone from BIM, Smart Places, Project Information, Rail, an investor, a data consultant. Okay, real variety of roles there too, which is all the more better and topical for what I'm going to speak about. And conference attire. So what have we got? Some majority of people are saying they're wearing something else. So they're not smart, they're doing something else. Somebody else is smart all over, and the others, probably like the rest of us working from home, are kind of smart from the waist up. So you've got your smart Zoom persona, but under the table, it could be anything. And Alan mentioned he had his shorts on as well, too, so that's really good. Great, okay, thanks for that. It's so much easier to present when I know who I'm talking to. So I'll bring back my slides and we'll go back to kind of like ordinary presenting for the time being. So, as I said, I work as the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager for Skanska, who are a Swedish principal contractor based in the US, Central Europe and also in the UK. And we do lots of different projects, and I work in the rail department in Skanska UK, and I'm currently working on the High Speed 2 project. which is where I've been for the last couple of years. Just a really quick overview, it's £4.5 billion of work to build a railway between London and Birmingham, and it's going to be a high-speed one, and it's something that can be seen from space when it's finished, which I think is really cool. We've got about 9,000 people that are coming through our sites, and we're about to start drilling a tunnel from the centre of London out to west of London for 26 kilometres, and all of the stakeholder engagement, the technical expertise that goes into doing that too. And my role is just the bottom right hand of this screen. So I'm really, really passionate about diversity and inclusion, but primarily building a workforce that can deliver exceptional major infrastructure projects. I have some objectives to represent the 7 boroughs of London that we work through, to really create an inclusive culture. And I weave what I do into our recruitment, obviously, but also our procurement, our collaboration, and some other elements there too. So to start with, I wanted to share some findings that came from McKinsey in May this year. And the report this comes from is titled "Diversity Still Matters." And this found that 27% of organisations had placed their quality, diversity and inclusion efforts on hold during the pandemic. And this is completely understandable why. We've got lots and lots of different things that we're engaging with, and businesses are understandably under a massive strain at the moment to just keep going, full stop really. But I really believe that we're missing a trick in how businesses are going to come back from this pandemic, and also how we're going to survive in the short term too. It's difficult to ask employees who are preoccupied on basic needs, home setup, the risk of contracting coronavirus, to focus on how they can be productive. This can be starkly seen in some of the data that's come from the coronavirus cases. So 60% of people who have died from COVID have got a disability. Our ethnic minorities are 10 to 50% more likely to die of coronavirus. And in the in the UK, 73% of people on ventilators through contracting coronaviruses are men. So I'm really advocating that we apply what I would say is a diversity and inclusion lens to explore how can we in the construction industry solve and bounce back from this crisis, and also how does it shape what we do going forward. So the slide shows in the graph that the progression of diversity and inclusion over the last couple of years. And first of all, it's really interesting to note that the number of organisations that are deemed to be diversity leaders has massively increased in the last 5 years. So there are more companies that are putting this at the top of their radar. And those that are putting it at the top of their radar and their priorities are performing better. So McKinsey's research is well quoted, but having more women at board level equates to 30% better financial performance, and for ethnic minorities it equates to 36% better financial performance. So we know there are huge gains from having this at the top of the agenda. And also, since the financial crisis, McKinsey has shown that those companies which bounce back out of that previous crisis are those that are faring pretty well over the last 5 years as well. So I want to start to think about, well, what does that mean for us in construction? And specifically, what does it mean for us as participants of this conference and the teams that we're developing? Because I would bet everyone a glass of wine that you've all been given kind of work streams to look at how your business is going to overcome coronavirus, and you're probably creating teams that are going to do that. And I want to apply a diversity and inclusion lens to look at how we might be doing that at the moment. So the next thing I need you to do is grab a pen and paper, which if you're working from home, you've probably got one pretty handy, and in the office as well, which is great. And I want you to make a list of 1 to 5 of the people you trust the most. And by trust, I mean people that you would confide in, people that you'd have on your Tiger team, on your A team, and people that you could see yourself working with day to day in a really close and effective way. And wherever possible, I'd like those 5 people to not be your family members. So they can be your friend, they can be part of your football team, they can be part of your colleagues, your network, but I would encourage you to think outside of your family. And generally speaking, when I do this and people are thinking about it, it takes them 1 or 2 minutes. I'll give you a couple of minutes. If you get 3, that's fine. That'll illustrate, I'm pretty sure, what we're going to do. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to get those names written down. Okay. So the next thing I want you to do is, just for you personally, I'm not going to ask you to share any of this, but just right next to them, just put in code, like the gender of those people. So whether they're male or female, and some other key attributes. So let's say their ethnic diversity, their education level, where they went to high school, college, university, they went beyond university. Perhaps where they live, or like their kind of perspective on the world. Just make a note of what those people that you trust have in common too. And whilst you're doing that, I want you to, once you've done that through your list, this is just a quick exercise, I want you to think about what you notice. And I have done this exercise many times, and generally speaking, and it's for me included, that the people that you trust that are on that list are generally quite similar to ourselves. And this is due to cave woman, caveman, cave person times, when we had to really quickly make an assumption about person, whether we were going to fight or flight if they came into our territory. And it happens in the workplace too. But there's some real biases that we need to look out for in who these people are that we trust. One of them is the affinity bias. So it's trusting people like us. And in coronavirus, we're probably building relationships that are quite like us too, whether it's based on somebody's working patterns or their family situation or their point of view, whether they're wearing a mask or not. There's also some bias around confirmation bias, so surrounding ourselves by people that agree with our point of view. And in times of crisis, we as humans really seek out these people because it gives us that sense of security. It helps us overcome our vulnerabilities if we're surrounding ourselves with people that agree, and it can help quash some of our anxiety. And there's also something in here about the bias of personality area. So we make assumptions about individuals that we believe is key to their personality without considering external factors. So why is your colleague working late? We might assume it's because they're really disorganized or they're struggling to cope with everything. Actually, they've got 3 children at home that they're trying to homeschool and they're having to pick up their work in the evening. Or why isn't someone putting on their camera and I'm struggling to build relationships with them? Well, it's not because they're still working from home in their pajamas. It's actually because they're a member of the LGBT+ community and they just don't feel comfortable sharing their home life with you because they might not be out at work. Now, this isn't an unconscious bias training session. I'm sure you've all done those, but it does have real impacts on how we're responding to this crisis around coronavirus. So, like I said, undoubtedly, businesses are creating more work streams, new pieces of work to consider to overcome it. And the teams that we are building are likely to be our most trusted people who are on that list and who we know are not necessarily representative of the business as a whole or the society that we work within. And construction has quite a higher level of risk for this too. At the best of times, industry statistics say that we are 13% female, 5% ethnic minority, and 3% have a disability. So we're likely to suffer from groupthink in an ordinary situation. Add all of the anxiety and time pressure that means we have to make decisions really quickly. We're building teams really quickly, which means that bias is rife. It means that our potential for innovation and to be successful is massively reduced too. This also is hugely reduced when we're working from home and we're forgetting about those water cooler moments, we're forgetting who our network might be, and the people that we're engaging with on a day-to-day basis might be smaller than us bumping into people in the office. So it's no surprise that I'm also going to talk about what working from home could mean in terms of diversity and inclusion and the construction industry as a whole. Now, when we look at building our teams, working from home could be quite a risk, but there's also a huge opportunity this brings for how we kind of build back better and respond to this crisis. So, like is in my bio, I've been talking about flexible working in construction on site for 4 years now, and we've won awards for our pilots and our approaches. We've been listed externally for kind of the culture that we're creating. But that all aside, I could not have wished for a better disruption to our industry than coronavirus has brought. The opportunity to get used to working in a different way in some of the ways the speaker before me discussed is huge. And it's not necessarily the innovation, like the tech, that we need to adopt, it's the implementation of doing this on a regular basis and making it become the norm that we need to consider. The data on that slide shows you some of the data that we've taken externally, we've taken from our teams internally. At peak, all of our sites were closed, all of our offices were closed, probably like yourself sitting at home. And we did some research, and 95% of our workforce, which does include some people working on site, had said that they could do their role in an agile way for more than 1 day per week at peak delivery. So that's when shovels are in the ground, tunnel boring machines are off, and we're delivering what are the high speed 2. So we've created a meeting drumbeat, which indicates who needs to be in the office on what day to get which bits of the work done and what other bits of work can be done from home. And also we've shattered a myth that you have to be on site, and to be on site you need to be there at 7:30 doing a start of shift briefing. Coronavirus has meant that we can't have a start of shift briefing for 60 people. Now we film it, we run it throughout the day, so there's kind of staggered shifts. So flexible working is really becoming something that is normal for our industry, which is fantastic for our workforce, but also provides a massive opportunity for us in the industry to diversify and bring in people from other industries who can help meet better our performance and bring innovation to the industry. 66% of our staff have told us that they would be more likely to stay working on the project if they could work in an agile way. So I know we've got to arrange for a flexible working framework to keep that 66% of staff. And on the flip side, flexibility is in the top 2 reasons why somebody would choose to join a new company. And given that number 1 was how exciting the project is, well, up the route of High Speed 2, there are around 50 different contractors engaging and working with High Speed 2 to deliver the works. So the joint venture I work on, we can't necessarily differentiate ourselves on how exciting the project is because there's 10,000 other people working on it, but we can differentiate ourselves in the flexibility that we offer. And we've got 20,000 people that we need to attract to the construction industry to deliver High Speed 2. So flexibility needs to be there. And Mark Lomas, who's the head of diversity and inclusion at High Speed 2, says, and I'm going to read this quote, "If we can build a railway that is going to be seen from space, we can definitely do it with cracking flexible working on site." And I think that's really inspirational as to how we go forward. So what about the benefits that this can bring to our industry as a whole? Well, again, just coming from the project that I work from, we've identified that there's £5 million per year of cost savings for adopting a different office accommodation strategy and through stopping the need for people driving or taking the train into work every single day. That equates to 236 tonnes of carbon being avoided per individual per month. 96% of staff have told us this has massively improved their well-being. Our line managers have adopted different leadership styles, and we've seen in a 5% increase over the period of the pandemic of people saying that they're clear what they need to do on a day-to-day basis, and line managers telling us that people are meeting their objectives too. And the key for this is that our output, so the activities that we need to do to stay on programme, has actually improved. The rate of which we complete activities is ticked up, it's got quicker, and we're meeting our deadlines 2% more effectively at the moment too. I am painting a really rosy picture here, and you will have seen that headlines recently from various news outlets have said that companies are abandoning the office. Twitter, Barclays Bank, PwC, different industries, but I'm really disappointed that there's no contractors up there, because if we're going to solve that skills gap that we face, reap the benefits of working from home, why aren't we out there making those statements as well and reconsidering our office accommodation and flexible working strategies? This is also really relevant to that McKinsey piece that we talked about right at the start. If we're going to be one of those companies or industries that progresses better out of a crisis by keeping diversity and inclusion on the agenda and reaping the benefits of that, we need to be in that leading position, and with flexibility and numerous other different things as well. So I'm virtually at the end here, and this is my final slide. And I want to talk a bit about what can construction do next, and what can you do next. First of all, I don't know if anyone recognises this person, the picture on the slide. This is a guy called Roger Bannister, who was the first person in the whole world to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And he did that on the 6th of May in 1954. But it's really interesting when you look back as to how that actually happened. Because in the year 1900, 54 years beforehand, the fastest time to run a mile was actually 4 minutes and 21 seconds. And 45 years later, that was still 4 minutes and 1 second. We still had not broken the barriers to how fast you could run a mile. And Roger really, really believed that he could. And sure enough, in 1954, he did it in precisely 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. So just under that 4 minute barrier. But what's really interesting is by the time 18 months later, 43 more people had run a sub 4 minute mile. So that once people had realized that that was possible, they could suddenly do it themselves. And that's what I wanted to think about in construction here. So yes, we've spoken about flexible working, we've spoken about building your teams. If you're sitting there thinking, but how is this possible? I want you to be inspired by Roger Bannister here. And definitely businesses have got a huge amount of stuff on their agenda at the moment. We've heard about climate, we've heard about tech, you're hearing about people, you're going to hear a lot of other ideas today. But I'd really encourage you to use this diversity and inclusion lens as one of your tools that you can think about how your business, your industry, your project is going to come out of this pandemic and some of the benefits that might bring. As you can probably tell, I love talking about this, so I'll happily take any questions now, but also if you've got questions or you want to have a virtual coffee or whatever, or you disagree with what I'm saying and you want to explore that further, then my email address is on the screen, and please don't hesitate to get in touch and we can chat about it in more detail as well. So Alan, that's everything from me.
Thanks Alice, thanks very much. Very positive message. I think a very important message, actually. You know, we all know this pandemic has been dreadful, and it's brought a lot of sadness to some communities and families and so on. But you know what? We have to remain positive.
Yeah. And
that's what I really liked about your presentation, and indeed the earlier presentation, is the positivity, the innovative ideas. You know, the ideas that we can work together. I've no doubt that the future workplace will look very different, and flexible working will become part of the future. I know, as an academic myself, I'm a lot more efficient than I was, but I do miss the people piece, you know, and the networking piece. So really great message. So any quick comments or messages for Alice before we move on to Vicki? There must be some questions. Anybody? Or should we leave it for the...
There is one.
Yes?
From Ronan Collins. Ronan, I can read it, or you can come on the voiceover if you want. He says, I'm not an optimist, but isn't the biggest challenge of the legacy, or I am an optimist, but isn't the biggest challenge the legacy of our industry? If you're not on the tools seem to be working, we are slacking off. How do we build the trust?
Yes.
Exactly.
I mentioned that as well. Trust is the big thing. Coupled with that is, how do you manage the younger people in your enterprise, the interns, the people that we're training, the people who are building their skills? How do the managers manage that? Can you tackle that one just for a second, or
Yeah,
What do you think?
sure. And I think the answer to both of those questions is kind of similar, because if you're this perception that if you're not on the tools seem to be working, then you're slacking off, is something that's like inherent within construction. And largely what we've done around that is come up with flexible working approaches that work for the team. So the foreman, for example, the people that need to be on the site supervising the work, one of the first trials we did was with them to talk about, well, how can this work? And actually part of their role, 95% of their role is being on site, but 5% of it is the administration and the ticking things off and making sure they're ready for the next day. So that's where that window of opportunity is for flexible working. And in that specific pilot, we gave them timesheets for the first full week to explore, okay, what is it that you're doing with that flexible working time? What activities can you take home? And you build that trust very, very slowly. And Alan, to your point, I'd say it's exactly the same with the younger generation. You need to have that conversation. It can't be a one size fits all flexible working approach. It needs to be team by team. And, you know, if a younger person needs to be in learning skills from others, well, so be it. Put it into that meeting drumbeat that I explained, for example, when everybody needs to be in on a Tuesday or whatever you, and bring that intern in there and kind of think about what activities need to be done in the office and what activities can be done in a more flexible way as well.
Yeah, so I guess it's also about inclusiveness and including people in the management of a process, but also giving people realistic expectations of what they have to do in the day. And then, you know, and of course I suppose in the early days of the Alliance, I keep saying to the guys, you know, if you're adding value to a business, not necessarily bringing clients in, but if you're adding value to a business, you're making a positive contribution to the community that you work with. That's really key here, you know.
Exactly, and it's encouraging managers to think, you know, what are the value-added activities that need to be done in an office, and what are the ones that can be done from home. On the project, we've created a list of 9 things. So 9 things you need to come to the office for, and the rest of it you can do it from home. And it's, you know, it is things like if you've got a real difficult conversation, or you've got some shed loads of printing to do, or you need really fast Wi-Fi to do some big number crunching, come in and do those things, and we will provide an office to do that. But the rest of the time, if you want to be in the office, if you want to be at home or somewhere else remotely, you can be doing it. And it's that two-way conversation that has to take place.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Alice. I'm sure we could chat for a long time. I mean, I hope you're able to stay with us for Q&A and perhaps for the virtual networking at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, I'm Vicki Reynolds, and my presentation today is called Culture Shock. The built environment's been forced to digitalise in order to survive a pandemic. What happens next? I'm just going to take a second, actually, before I crack on, to let you all know that I'm epileptic, and I had a seizure this weekend, and I've managed to bite through both sides of my tongue. So if you hear lisping or I stumble over my words, please do forgive me.
You're doing great. I'm sorry to hear that. You're looking. Okay.
In the spirit of sharing, I may as well. What happens next in our built environment? So the first things first, who am I? Well, that's my name. That's my face on a good day. And before I worked in construction, I did a few years in facilities management and in the software development industry. And since moving into the built environment about 7 years ago, I've held roles in document control, information management, BIM coordination and management, BIM consultancy and digital strategy. But right now I'm the head of digital for i3PT. So we provide independent assigned certifier and design certifier services. We carry out a range of other technical advisory roles. And we've also got a software as a service platform called Cert Central, which offers quality project, document and health and safety management tools for construction projects. And that's all driven by data and analytics. So we want to improve behavior on construction projects by using data dashboards, clear responsibility workflows, and really simple task management so that it makes it easier to track performance and to demonstrate quality throughout end-to-end throughout a construction project. As Alan mentioned, I'm also affiliated with a number of industry groups and initiatives that helps me to keep my knowledge of the sector relevant, but also allows me to try and influence change. So I'm Global Vice Chair of Women in BIM, who aim to attract, retain and support women in digital construction. We've got over 400 members, over 35 countries, and provide support, learning content, mentoring and speaking opportunities to our network. And I am an ambassador for the UK BIM Alliance, who are an independent thought leadership group, and they aim to ensure that BIM becomes and remains business as usual, and it establishes a common understanding and common approach to BIM in the UK. And this is the group that spearheaded the development of the UK BIM standards, which then evolved to the ISO 19650 suite of international BIM standards. Also, I'm part of the Digital Special Interest Group for the CIOB, who are the world's largest and most influential professional body for construction management and leadership, and part of the Built Environment Group for the IET, who have provided 150 years of knowledge sharing, influence and expertise across the engineering community. And last but not least, I'm one of the co-founders of the Digital Twin Fan Club, who promote healthy debate and discussion around the concept of digital twins. We've got a whole library of podcasts available on Spotify and any other podcast medium that you want to use. And we regularly are used as an impartial sounding board for software vendors. And we just want to create thought-provoking and engaging events and content around the subject of digital twins. That's enough about me. I guess for my presentation today, it makes sense to go back a little bit in time. Maybe not quite that far, just pre-COVID. In fact, that's probably a little bit more reasonable at the moment. So before we were all existing in bubbles and practicing social distancing, this is what our industry looked like on the most part. Lots of people having lots of meetings in big office spaces, all sat around desks, talking, sharing information. It actually was a really nice place to work. But we did have certain problems with our culture. One of those was presenteeism, or as it's sometimes called, working from home syndrome. So it's already been touched on today, but an old manager of mine once told me that unless he could see me working, he would assume that I wasn't, which made me feel like crap, to be quite honest. There's just no trust in that relationship, so it's difficult to work like that. We also had a culture of collaboration, which was great, but it sort of stopped at the point of physical meetings. So if we didn't know how to solve a problem, we'd just get a bunch of people in a room and talk about it and hope. And also, we were beginning to see more and more BIM teams or digital teams, which once again is great. But it meant that then there was a group of people whose job it was to use technology, so the rest of us didn't have to. But with COVID, suddenly, we couldn't all be in the office all the time. You needed more than just a travel card and a suit to attend a meeting. You needed to know how to use Zoom or Teams, and you needed a decent internet connection, decent hardware, and all the right software logins. And digital and virtual working needed to become accessible to everyone. So digital tools are starting to become more and more part of everybody's job. And for those who had previously embraced digital, they found it easier to adapt. So I was talking to Hadil Sadoun, who is the BIM manager at Coventry University and the chair of BIM for Estates, in a Women in BIM podcast recently. And she's telling me how much easier it was for them to virtually plan an eventual return for students and for staff after lockdown to the university without ever having to go on site themselves. And that's because of the detailed BIM information that they had committed to developing way before COVID was an issue. So that video there was just a fly through of one of their buildings. And I've also spoken to other asset owners who have had to rush out and collect information via scans and photogrammetry so that they could do the same exercise. The difference is that they have the added cost and risk of undertaking that task under time constraints and during a pandemic. So those who were prepared before are having an easier time now. All of a sudden as well, those organisations and individuals that were reluctant to use digital tools have had no other choice but to adapt. And ironically, many of them have realised that this whole digital thing can actually be quite useful, especially in a situation where you can no longer rely on human beings to be physically present. As Ava mentioned, the demand for smart systems in offices has skyrocketed during the COVID crisis. And using technology to limit risk to human life might seem like it's a solution we need right now for the short term. But anyone who's been listening to David Attenborough, or in fact even the news today, will know that this isn't our first global pandemic and it won't be our last. So this has become a regular activity for us all, and we've all got to know each other's kids and we've all got to know each other's cats. And feedback from the field, as Alice was saying, suggests that people are quite enjoying the flexibility of working from home, and many employers are even considering reducing the amount of office space that they own or rent to cut down on additional overhead costs. And from a health and safety perspective, I think that this is an extremely good idea. As an example, the last major project I worked on was a high-rise mixed-use block in the City of London. This is a view from Liverpool Street. The project itself was just down the road there, and this is Liverpool Street on a good day. This block, once complete, was due to bring an extra, or up to an extra 10,000 people daily into an already extremely congested area, mainly to work in that office block. And this kind of overcrowding is a risk to people's health. It's a target for terrorism, and it increases emissions as people can do at home. So don't get me wrong, I don't want to abolish offices, but it would be beneficial in some instances for them to be smaller, for them to be less of an expense, and for them to be used as collaborative spaces and places to host specialist equipment and meetings, rather than somewhere for every member of staff to go every single day. And anecdotally as well, I've heard of a few organisations talking about the way they've boosted their use of construction technology during the pandemic. Now, I'm a little bit loath to go into too much detail because we're still months away from seeing decent case studies that will indicate the success of these rollouts. But these are technologies that, if used right, would be able to increase efficiencies and accuracies on site without having to increase the number of human beings. So as Niall mentioned earlier, there's the handheld scanners, which are a great help. We've also got on the left here, Lobster Vision, who have high definition time-lapse cameras that allow you to view and measure progress remotely from your laptop, your tablet, or your phone. And you can even directly compare a project design model, a BIM model, to a photographic image from Lobster to check on construction accuracy, and that's accurate up to millimeters. And then you've got HoloBuilder on the right, which uses 3D cameras to create intricate and accurate virtual reality environments. So that can allow your client or a visitor to take a tour of a project without actually ever having to set foot on site. And there are plenty more tools out there to explore. And this is all very sexy and exciting, but these technologies all rely on something often considered, to be quite honest, a little bit more dull, but it's something that I'm very interested in and very passionate about. And that is good data and information management. So to get the most out of the technology and software that we're using on projects, and that we're going to start using more on projects now, and to improve the way that we collaborate and share lessons, we have to have common naming conventions, such as the standard laid out in ISO 19650. And we have to have a consistent way to classify assets. And I've given the example of Uniclass here, just because Uniclass is a system that I'm very familiar with, and it's referenced in 19650. And this is because machines don't read context. They need clear, consistent, and accurate data to work with. And as we bring more digital tools onto projects and expect them to work together, this consistency in the way that we name or classify assets becomes even more important. So, in fact, with the UK's drive towards creating a national digital twin, which is something that we've set our focus on now, this naming conventions like this are critical for our success. And so my advice really to Ireland would be to keep an eye on the UK's progress in that field specifically, because I'm sure that we will have a lot of lessons learned for you to absorb. Also, this allows you to do all kinds of analytics. For instance, this is Search Central, and you can see a number of outstanding design issues and snags relating to each work package on a project, which has its own Uniclass code. So we have it set up so that the users themselves don't even realize that they're classifying information, but every piece of data that they put into the system is attributed to a Uniclass classification, and therefore it's all linked and can be used for analytics that all support each other. And so this allows us to manage our subcontractors more easily and instantly see where we're expecting most delays and problems. When you start to look at this data over a portfolio of projects, it can become really, really valuable. So you can begin to identify trends. For example, this contract type always has this type of delays at this point, or this is the most successful method for building this type of asset. We know that because we see fewer issues. And so to recap on what we've talked about so far, we're here. Or we were here, sorry. Presenteeism, digital disengagement, technology as a bolt-on or a separate team, and information management and data management as a support service or an annoyance. And where we've got to today, in thanks partly to a pandemic, which, although awful, has been a stepping stone in the right direction for us using technology better, we have got to home working. We've got an industry of digital novices now, some experts, but at least the lowest level is a digital novice. We've got technology that we use to solve existing problems, which is great. And we're beginning to see the importance of information and data management to make that technology to work. So where do we want to go next? Well, much like Alice was saying, flexibility, flexible working, people choosing the right way of working to support the job that they have to do. We want digital to be business as usual for everyone, and technology should be used to preempt problems, not just fix them after we found them. And data standardization will play a bigger and bigger part in everything that we do. So that's where we're hoping to get to, but that won't be the end of the journey. In fact, the journey will never end. Our current targets will seem as crude to future generations as hand-drawn construction drawings seem to us now. There will always be improvements to make, and that's why I love working in this industry, and I think it's probably why most people do. The demand for smart systems in offices has skyrocketed during the COVID crisis, as Ava was saying, with the potential to reduce waste by 75 to 90%. That word, potential, there's a lot more left that we can do. And digital isn't its own silo, sustainability isn't its own silo, people aren't their own silo. Hopefully with this presentation, I've been able to pull in what the other presenters have said and shown that it's all moving towards the same target. We're not different teams working on different things. So why does this matter? Well, we've got a lot of problems to solve. Some of them are related to carbon, waste, climate change. Some are related to modern slavery, and some are related to health and safety. But all of them are critical, and all of them need the smartest minds to come together to solve them. And some of this will be enabled through technology, but we also need engineers, construction managers, designers, etc., who are the very best in their field. And currently, the best new talent aren't necessarily that interested in what we do. There's a worryingly high dropout rate on construction-related university courses in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in Ireland, but I'd guess it's similar. And young people and graduates that I've spoken to over the past few years always, without fail, comment on how shocked they were by the lack of digital technology in use when they entered our industry. These are digital natives. They expect to be using digital tools. So yes, we need smart and strong people to help us digitalize, but there are a lot that are already here. And so now it's our responsibility to digitalize further to attract the next generation. And so we've traveled from pre-pandemic inefficiency to forced digitalization, and it's really hard to look at where we are and see where we might go next, because the possibilities seem endless. But it's clear that we've been given a boost, which we really need to build upon. And I'm hoping and driving for focus on better information.
We're just losing a little bit of sound there, Vicki.
Management, the standardization of up to respect for data and analytics. Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay.
Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm driving for a focus on better information management, standardization, the use of data classification systems, and a more developed respect for data and analytics. I also believe that the built environment will be forced to become less siloed in the future, and collaboration will begin to take precedence, over self-preservation. Who really knows, to be quite honest, but hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be able to look back and smile at how far we've come since 2019. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan. And just to confirm, can you see my screen and me?
Yeah, Brandon, you're all good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Brandon, you're all good to go.
Great. Thanks, everybody. My name is Brandon Oliveri O'Connor. I'm the Senior Director for the UK and Ireland for Procore. I am responsible for Procore's expansion across the UK and Ireland, which now includes a team of 30 staff. We've been based out of London for a couple of years now. Prior to that, we're servicing the industry and the market from our headquarter office in California. So very excited to have grown from 8 launching individuals to 30 in the short 2 years we've been here. The team that's locally consists of all of the roles you'll interact with as a Procore customer. And they're dedicated to this region. So they can be sales that are on the pre-sales side, they can be implementation, ongoing customer success, just about every role that you'll need to be supported through your journey with Procore. For those of you that don't know, Procore is a technology business which enables construction companies to work smarter with an easy-to-use platform for construction, which can manage your projects, resources, and financials. Since we launched 2 years ago, we've seen a lot of success in Ireland. We're constantly amazed with the Irish market's adoption of technology, a thirst for new ideas and innovation, whether that's construction specific or not. Just about every person we speak to seems to be pursuing a master's degree or something on the side, which definitely makes me feel pretty lazy. But it's been an incredible journey, and we've really loved working with the island. Today, we work with 11 of Irish Building Magazine's list of the top 30 main contractors in Ireland. That includes Ardmach and Connacht Construction. That's up from 1 from when we first launched 2 years ago, like I mentioned. So there was one customer that helped bring us to the market, and we've nearly 10x'd that since we've joined. These 11 customers account for an estimated nearly €1.5 billion of Irish turnover in 2019. What I'm here to talk about today is a bit of research we actually conducted earlier this year on how COVID-19 has accelerated transformation in construction. And in my brief time today, I just want to share with you some of those findings. All right. So what did we find? We've seen the digital transformation and adoption of technology in the Ireland construction market since before we launched in the region, as I mentioned in the last slide, but COVID has definitely been a recent catalyst, not just in Ireland, but across all of our global markets. Well over half of, or 66% of construction businesses surveyed rolled out some sort of new technology during lockdown. That could be a platform like Procore, or any other example of software and technology to drive productivity. For example, if you take Procore's free integration with Zoom, we're all on it today. I know many of the market uses Teams as well. We released this Zoom integration in response to the pandemic. Within 24 hours of going live, we saw 130 customers install it and 2,700 meeting instances created. It's over 20 per customer in the first day. 94% of those surveyed said that they have seen an improvement in the way their teams work and projects are run since rolling out new tech during lockdown. It's constantly something we run up against when we're talking to new prospective customers or clients, people that are interested in learning more. It's all about ROI, right? And everyone establishes that and thinks about ROI differently. While this specific detail doesn't go deep into what a lot of you will want to know, I think it really gives an indication that all these clients are receiving value from the systems that they're rolling out from the pandemic onward. Now, the new global challenge has outlined the importance of providing teams with the right tools to allow them to continue to work as efficiently and proactively as possible, regardless of what's been thrown at them. At Procore, we jokingly say the only constant is change. That's never been more true for our business, and I think the construction industry as a whole, really. Our research also showed that over half, or 59%, said that they would have been able to keep sites and projects open longer had they been able to shift to remote work faster. I think that's a really an interesting piece here. And when we first went into lockdown and started to better understand what this pandemic really meant to the industry, myself and the other local leaders out of the London office here tried to speak with our top 25 customers across Europe. So, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. What we did is we conducted 30 to 60 minute conversations just to understand how they're doing, where we can help, what our teams can be doing to better support them. And one of our customers locally here in the UK brought up something that was really important. And he basically said, because of having Procore, we didn't have to think about shifting to remote work. It's like we had many meetings trying to figure out how we were going to keep sites open, what the new process was going to be with specialty contractors, subcontractors. We had a lot of conversations. Not one of them were about technology or understanding how we would keep everyone collaborating. And I think that speaks volumes for not just what Procore offers, but all of technology as we shift into this new workforce. So one of the conclusions from our research, perhaps unsurprisingly, probably especially for this group here, is unsurprisingly identified that platform technology is playing a particularly pivotal role in the future of how we work in construction. The key word there is platform technology, as a side to isolated systems or point solutions that solve very specific challenges for our clientele base. Nearly 9 in 10, or 86% of construction managers said they would use one platform technology if they could. So they'd try to condense and consolidate all of the technology that they do have at their disposal into one if it was an option. Almost half, or 38% of respondents, said they can't do their jobs as effectively without any form of technology. Now, while COVID has acted as a catalyst to drive progress and adoption in many businesses, in others, it's just acted as a spotlight to something that many of us maybe already knew. But that's okay. We're all at different levels of this journey towards technology adoption. What's important, most important in my opinion, is that we're all making progress, right? We speak to about 20 to 30 new construction businesses across the UK and Ireland a week. They're all on varied levels of understanding of how technology can support or help their business and how they should get started, right? We don't care where you are on that journey. We're just happy to know you are, to ensure that you are doing everything you can to future-proof your business. An interesting statistic that really kind of supports that, I think, is 52% of the respondents felt empowered to change and apply the positive learnings to the future of work. So over half took all the learnings of the last 3 to 6 months, and they are confident in pushing that forward to drive business into the future. Now, where the gaps between traditional ways of working and remote working have been most apparent, technology has come to the fore to increase efficiency and connect teams. And I think these statistics really satisfy that. So to wrap things up, a notable feature of the COVID-19 process has definitely been the shift to remote work. I'm here in my bedroom. Connectivity and mobility are driving this new way of working and helping to improve the lives of everyone in construction. With home offices being turned into front offices, that crisis has highlighted and emphasized the importance of particular technologies to maintain connection. Platform technology has been key to our customers being able to weather the COVID storm. This technology provides a single source of accurate, timely data. It streamlines communications and workflow. It supports the entire project lifecycle with integrated mobile-ready applications. And it keeps staff productive and, from our perspective, more importantly, safe. Let's not forget, we're constantly evolving as an industry. I joked earlier, the constant is change here. Point solutions like traditional pen and paper to Excel spreadsheets are cut adrift at times like this due to their inability to span workflows and processes and really evolve and transform with the business around us. So thank you all very much for letting me share some of these findings. We only had a brief amount of time today, so I'd encourage you to head to our website and
you
check
did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brandon. Thank you. We might just start going through the Q&A. What I might do is just pick up a few comments from some of the delegates, if I may, and just throw them out there as a kind of a comment that any of you could pick up. I know there's a comment there from Ralph Montague. What if we pay people for results rather than time? Let people run the mile in their own time, in their own way, as long as they finish the mile. Interesting one. Provocative comment there from Ralph. Any comments?
I'm guessing that's tailored towards me and my presentation with Roger Bannister. So yeah. Do you know what? This is something we have actually debated a little bit, particularly for our site operatives, because ultimately they're paid by the hour at the moment, and the hours that are needed to be on site. And paying somebody by the hour creates lots of incentives to work as many hours as possible, which can be really harmful to somebody's well-being, and also kind of that then also dictates how many hours some of the sites operate sometimes. But also, like Ronan's saying, it can create some different kind of incentives. So we've looked into it. I think probably there needs to be some sort of work done in looking at how we can shift how we pay people to reflect some of it. I don't know if paying them for which way was it, their time or their output, because construction has deadlines to meet, and we've all got to kind of be on the same, maybe pay them for that deadline. But also you need things, we could do things really, really quick, but there might be risks with that in terms of health and safety, or adopting the guidance or the stakeholder engagement that might be needed on a high-speed 2 project, for example, too. But looking at that pay structure is definitely something we're doing. And we've partnered with an organisation for TimeWise, for anybody that's interested in this, that have done similar pilots in manufacturing, kind of 24-hour factory environments, about how flexible working come into those environments, and looking at pay structure specifically. So that could be a port of call to look at more, but also they're leading a pilot across 3 different contracting organisations, of which Skanska is one of them, and we'll be able to share those results in Q2 next year.
But I guess it's the point I made earlier, if everyone's making a positive contribution to a business, then they need to be integrated into the business effectively. Comment there from Martin Searson. Thanks, Alice. Does this not mean that we're getting more and more emails? I can certainly vouch for that, which is a poor collaboration tool, rather than having those face-to-face conversations. And I might throw that one at you, Niall. I mean, what's your email account like?
Well, we did see initially that kind of knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic, but I think what we've been working on with the rollout of Teams, you're actually trying to change the channel of communication. So you're more having collaborative conversation rather than a transactional conversation in email. So we're also trying to encourage our supply chain to do the same, because what usually happens even just from an information management perspective, so I appreciate even a lot of Vicki's comments earlier, is that you have all these separate channels of communication. The information actually gets lost, or they're not actually following a particular process. So where possible, we're trying to channel the communication into hub sites or into kind of around the project rather than being independent.
Can
Very
I
good.
jump in there?
Yes, absolutely, Vicki.
Cheers. It's just to point out as well that you have to pick the right communication for the right task. So sometimes emails are the best way to communicate if it's just a casual conversation that you're having. The problem with everybody getting together in a meeting room is it can be great for collaboration, but you can all leave thinking that you've had different conversations. So there's a struggle with then capturing those conversations and those agreements and that information. And that's where some of the common data environments and document management systems have ways to track communication, so like their own version of email, which are good, but it really depends on what you're trying to do. Because if you look at the Grenfell Tower review that's going on now in court, one of the biggest issues, if you look at the way that those guys were communicating with each other, and I say guys because it was guys, were communicating with each other via email, they were under there's such a casualness to email that even though they were talking about life and death decisions, it became very, very casual. And so there are all sorts of connotations with the type of communication tool that you use.
Absolutely. And of course, I started setting the context about, the unprecedented rate of digital adoption. And of course, any IT manager of a medium, large size company in the built environment, even small companies will probably have had their they probably have a significant increased workload. But I suppose that raises the comment from Roland Collins, one of our speakers later in the week. He talks about how important will data and IT security be going forward, as we're now seeing escalating instances of hacking, ransomware, and our industry are very susceptible to these challenges. Any comments on that issue?
I suppose I could kick
Yeah,
off
it's
saying,
Vicki, maybe Vicki,
yeah.
and then Niall.
Sure.
Vicki, do you want to come in there and then we'll take Niall?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, just a point as well, the PAS was mentioned. So ISO 19650.5 is the new sort of security standard that we have out. All of the ISO documents are high level on purpose. So what we need to be doing as organizations is taking the recommendations in the international standards and turning those into individual processes and procedures for your own organizations. And that really, by thinking about how you make that useful for yourselves, is how you then become safer, because you're forced to think about every single part of it. And it's also going to be really, really important that we start to really think about what data we collect and what data we store. And then it comes back to communication again, is when are you using emails, when are you using a chat function, where is that data being stored, is it secure, what information are you passing on? So yeah, it will become critical. The thing is, you can't escape that by going to another industry, because every other industry is going through, either has gone through or will go through this. So we can't use it as an excuse.
No. Thanks, Vicki. Niall, want to come in there?
yeah, so what we find is that whether we like it or not, we are on a daily basis building targets. So how we aggregate data and how we analyze it, it does have to be brought together to receive that benefit. So the reality is no system is unpenetrable. What we do find is that it's the processes we put in place, but also really the ownership of the people around how they govern those data sets. So a lot of my role is actually spent in system architecture workshops, where we're actually trying to design out those points of entry. But it is quite difficult because, again, there are a lot of fail points around people specifically. So as we move forward, what we're trying to do is to create more levels of resistance. Unfortunately, no system is safe. So all we can really do is kind of refine that process and continue to be vigilant.
Okay. So now we want to start using Zoom, all the features in Zoom now. So hands up, any questions for any of our speakers? There must be a few questions. Have any questions for Eva for maybe under the sustainability issue? No? Let's just see now. Actually, I might have a question for Eva. You still with us? Eva,
Yes,
are you still
I'm
with us?
here.
Yes, how are you? Yeah. I suppose for the industry to take sustainability really seriously, what we need is the larger clients to drive the change. And are you seeing that? I know you're mainly working in the UK. Are you seeing, and of course you've got global presence, but are you seeing that across the world, that local authorities, large public sector groupings, governments are really starting to push this now? To
Yes,
make the
absolutely.
change. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. It is true, as you say, that those that are the asset owners, the asset holders, have a lot of influence about those decisions and what happens and when the change happens. And we have seen that the penny has dropped now. The momentum is starting to get stronger and stronger. And we have seen those clients of ours, especially those with large portfolios, long-term portfolios, those with presence in other countries as well, and so on. The ones that are in the game for the long term have all, one after the other, in quick succession, made a very strong stance, a very clear stance, that their buildings will be, need to be, and will be net zero carbon by 2030, if not earlier, for sure, for any new developments. And the ambition is for their whole portfolio to be net zero much earlier than 2050. And they're talking about 2030. So that's coming in quite fast, and it's a challenge to the whole industry, I would say, to designers, contractors. How exactly do we best service our clients? And that is now becoming a very strong point of competition, and healthy competition, and collaboration.
So there needs to be a direct correlation between those 7 business opportunities you spoke about and business success. What does success look like in the future for an architectural, engineering, surveying, construction company in the built environment, or any stakeholder, that you need to mitigate your, you need to follow those 7, or what other legislative processes are being suggested. And there was a comment there from Ralph Montague here.
Absolutely.
Traditional practice is to get on site as quick as possible. And to resolve issues while you're on site, we have to understand that resolving issues on site is the most expensive of the solutions, and most disruptive as well. And also, it's a very unsafe place to solve issues. The best, least expensive, least disruptive, and safest place to resolve issues is remotely in the digital model. Anyone take that one?
I agree to a point. I think the least expensive, least disruptive, and safest way to resolve issues is to preempt them, and so that can be done virtually. I think that there are some things that can't be dealt with in a
Yeah,
virtual environment. That just can't. And it's about identifying what those are and making that very clear in the way that your teams operate. You know, when it's appropriate to look at the model to resolve something, and when it's appropriate to get your boots on and go out onto site, and also then equally when we want evidence of that fix, and when we don't. So yeah, it's I agree almost fully with Ralph.
Yeah, but perhaps the message should be, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric around this, but we'll be talking about digital twins later in the week. But if clients do get the message that you digitize first, you build your, like in automotive, aeronautical industries, you build your digital model first. You make sure everything works and fits. And once you're clash free and everything is working, then you can go to site and you will have less problems on site, as Ralph is suggesting.
We will need to change the way that we deliver our contracts work. I think the contracts that we have in construction at the moment don't fully support that kind of working, but they could do. So that is, and everything that we come back to here, when the conversation is about digital or information or data, it really quickly goes back to contracts and human beings and process. So I think those are the things. Culture is what we need to fix first in the industry.
Yeah.
To me, to show that we can digitalize.
That came very strongly through this afternoon. So maybe the last comment I'll take from the chat box, then I might ask for some final questions, and then we'll wrap up. Was a beautiful sunny day here. I need to get out and have a walk, as you all do need to break. So sustainability, why the slow adoption of LEED, BREEAM, SQL and WELL building standards, even in this current time. So for new buildings, we all need to raise our understanding and educate on these standards. Should this not become mandatory to drive change rather than just people momentum, just relying on voluntary momentum and CSR drivers? Don't know what that means, Martin, but anyway, what do you think? Is, you know, having these wonderful plaques on a building reception wall behind the secretary or behind the reception desk showing that you've got all these brands, is that enough? Eva, do you want to take that one? Oh, corporate social responsibility. Thank you, Martin. Yeah.
That's a very good point from Martin. And I would say that these green building assessments are brilliant tools and methodologies to get the whole client, designer, contractor team thinking and give something tangible, you know, recognizable evidence that the building design and construction has thought about sustainability and how the building will operate, and also the comfort and well-being with the well building standard mentioned for the occupiers. And those have been not fully mandatory, not in all countries, not in all geographies, but they have gained momentum and they have actually changed the market where these have been implemented, because contractors, suppliers, manufacturers had to gear up to service those building assessments. And that has developed the current markets further. So now, with the strengthening of the legislation and the new requirements, the market is ready now to have a more universal application. And the public and the awareness has grown in the meantime. So it's not considered a luxury, nice to have anymore. It's an absolute must have and a minimum.
Yeah. I mean, you talked at length as well, Eva, about, you know, sustainability and having, you know, those, you know, having our buildings that are sustainable and less impactful on the planet, but also having buildings that are, you know, nice places to work and people can, you know, that well-being is addressed. So perhaps there's in the future there'll be a singular standard that will combine planet, people, processes together. You know, that when people work for this company, they know they're working in a smart building, they're working in a place of well-being. Maybe that's something that could look in the future. So listen, thank you everyone. Unless we have any final comments, I'm going to give 5 seconds for any questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Any final questions? Or I hope you all enjoyed this afternoon. I thought it was a tremendous event, if I may say so myself. It was a great presentation by all of you. The more of these events I do, the more I think, wow, can we do better? And this was one that I thought just went so smoothly. You know, 4, 5 very good presentations, very positive messages, I thought. Did you all enjoy it? It was great. There should have been 5,000 people at this event. And I think you're all going to be the internet, you're all going to be social media sensations after this. So listen, great community of speakers, wonderful ideas. You know, if I go back to when we set up the Alliance 20 years ago, we would, you know, we're stronger together than we are separately. We need to be more collaborative. That was the big message this afternoon. So thank you, Eva, Niall, Alice, Vicki, Brandon for great presentations. More tomorrow, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at you know, technology and how that will disrupt the future, and then moving on then to digital twins and industrialization and information management during the week. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I really, really did. It was really, really good. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop off now, but we're going to stay online. If anyone wants to stay online to chat to any of the keynotes, please do so. It's quite informal. It's kind of a virtual networking. If people don't stay, then, you know, that's fine. It's I'll find out from Shannon and the team how it works. So thank you, Shannon, Suzanne, Elenia. And just to say, we will be in touch with you, all our speakers. One of our colleagues, Barry McCauley, Dr. Mary McCauley, will be doing a kind of a reflection piece on this event, picking out the keynote messages. So he may well be in touch with you, but I also just want to wish you all my sincere best wishes. Stay healthy, stay strong, and stay connected. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay, guys?
Thank you.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Stay safe.